because the thing is that like you and I have been wanting to catch up for a bit. You've been out of town, Bryan, and moving and starting a new call and all this, right?
Yes.
And so it's like you fell off the earth, sort of. But then I kind of feel like I fell off the earth too.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you weren't necessarily looking for me, but I've been looking for myself, like trying to find a little space. I don't know what the right word is. Not to reorient. The orientation feels really good right now, but to just kind of have a conversation with a friend, that kind of thing. And it's so bad that here we are. You said, "Hey, we should catch up." I'm like, "Okay, let's talk," but I'm going to record it, and it's going to be my podcast for this week.
Living life in public.
Because that's what. Well, I mean, that's sort of what we're doing, and maybe that leads back to the story you were about to tell. I'm also, in theory, this is the first day of the first kind of real vacation I've taken in well over a year. So I'm not really vacating, right? And so I'm cheating a little in that regard too, because I want to keep the podcast going, and it's actually a source of income now and all these other things. So, but hey, yeah. So you and I are going to chat as long as you're free and talk about whatever. And I think that'll be entertaining, honestly. But you had a story there. I don't know if you wanted to tell that publicly or not. But
well, sure. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Ardith and John. This is bad. I think Ardith and John stopped in. They just knocked on the door, and of the church. I say on the YouTubes, hey, when you're in Austin, stop in, check, say hi. And they did. They just stopped in to say hi and to thank me for the work. And I said, hey, I'm going to go and talk to Jonathan Fisk in a few minutes. And they said, well, tell him hello, and that we've been Lutheran for 70 years, and we had no idea about the riches of our Lutheran doctrine and teaching until we started paying attention to you guys. And so they were just, I mean, really kind of overwhelmed with joy at the theological work that's been done. And they told me that they got a note that a martyr's faith was delivered to their house today.
Oh, is that
the book came out?
I didn't know it was out yet.
It came out yesterday.
Sweet.
Yeah, it came out yesterday. I haven't seen it yet. So I think Carrie said, I'll bet you CPH has our old address. So my copies of the book are showing up at our old house in Colorado.
That's funny. I've had an issue with getting royalty checks from them in that way where like they have no problem sending me the books to my address, but then the checks will go to a previous address. So there's like some sort of non-connection in the in their database or whatever. So that's happened twice to me. So that it may be, and when your royalty check is due in November, which I don't think this book will be on that one. It'll just be American Christianity.
Yeah, should be.
I don't know. I don't know. When I had my releases, I'm pretty sure they hold that initial. I don't know, maybe it will be, but I feel like they bump it back to the next 6 months. Anyway, that's weeds. But your story about John and say her name again. Ardith. That's cool.
Judith. This is so embarrassing because I think they'll listen to this and then I'll. Oh man, this has been one of the things the frustrating things to me about having a new call. Is my capacity to remember people's names is a lot worse than I thought it was.
Yeah, take some work.
It is really something, and it's such a great thing to be here. I'm down at St. Paul and Jesus Lutheran Church for the Deaf, both in Austin, Texas. But it's like just there's like a 5-minute transition between church and Bible class, and then back to church again, and trying to cram 300 names in is. It's tough.
Yeah. So in Aurora, you had one service. Is that right?
Yeah, one service.
Yeah,
long service.
But that completely changes the flow of the morning to add that second service. If I had one complaint about my congregation here in Rockford, St. Paul, it would be the time between the services in which I try to shove a 45-minute Bible class, and I do it, but it's like on hyperdrive. And the chance to sit and talk is pretty limited, even for the people. But the only answer to go around that is to push your late service back to like 11, right? Which or go earlier, 7:45. And that's a real challenge.
What is your schedule there?
We have an 8 o'clock service, and then we have a 9. In theory, it's a 9:20 Bible study, usually more like 9:30. And then a 10:30 service. So we could push back to 10:45 and gain 15 minutes there.
Here's my weird schedule. I got 8:15, 9:30, and
Oof.
10:40.
See, the 10:40 and 9:30 is better. It gives you a little space. You still can, 45-minute Bible study is all you get, right? And you got to be moving.
I go 9:30 to 10:30. I mean, I go to 10:33 or whatever,
Well,
and then
I say
run.
45. I'm right there with you. Because it's like, I'm looking at the clock and it's like, oh, it's 10:15. We can do one more question. One more question. Here we go. We can fit it in. But it makes for a very crowded
I've been doing
feeling.
hard theology questions just for the summer,
Yeah.
everyone wrote on index cards, and I'm just kind of having someone pick a card, any card kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
And which has been a lot of fun. But my idea was to take 3 or 4 questions in a class, but it's been one. And in fact, it took me 2 Sundays to answer one. Someone asked me a question about the liturgy versus praise music, and it took 2 Sundays to talk about it, and we're just barely scratching the surface. It's just incredible.
Yeah. We spent nearly a year plus in the Sermon on the Mount. 1 or 2 verses a week. You just can't get it all. Yep. And especially when you have to have such a short, squished class, there's a lot of review too. It's like, so last week we were dealing with this, which is going to impact what we say today, and so you spend another 15 minutes on it again, right? And all that. But that transition, the names, what I have done and found useful, whether or not you take this as a tactic, is I just announce, hey, I'm going to learn your names. It's going to take me a while. I'll need your grace and forgiveness. So if I don't know your name on the way out, I'm going to ask you your name, and I'm just going to keep doing it. If I don't know you, I ask your name until I know it. And it probably right now, I think I've got everybody who's a regular attendee. That's not 300; it's 160 or so, plus a few more actually. I've got them. If you only come every other week or every third week, a little rougher. Right? I still might not have you, but it is, unless you're just going to dig in and repeat. Right? It's hard to push that in. And one of the weirdest things that happens is it's like you only have so much space in the hard drive, and it doesn't tell you that when it's gonna write this name down in your head hard drive, it's gonna overwrite someone else's name. And so, someone else will come out and you know this person like really well. And then you're like, I don't know right now who you are. I know you. And that's a weird phenomena to have happen as you're trying to build that memory capacity. But there probably isn't a more valuable tactical thing to do than learn the names of the people.
So we have a nice photo directory, and so I use it like flashcards every day as I kind of pray through it. But the problem is the pictures aren't good enough, and looking at the names and seeing the people. So we're just going to go. I just made the executive decision last week is that we're doing name tags for everybody. And so we're going to put name tags on everybody and have name tags there for visitors to put in, and it's good. I think that's going to be helpful because I found out that having 2 services, a lot of people don't actually know each other. And so, but they recognize each other's faces, and they've been around for so long that now it's embarrassing to not know the other person's name. So
you really are you're going tyrant then. So barcodes are next, right? After name tags. So
check. I thought about that of taking a picture every Sunday, just taking a picture of everybody who's there. And then, Google or a Facebook face recognition could just do the attendance for me.
Oh, that's interesting. That's kind of fun.
But having a picture of everybody in church and then just kind of looking through and quizzing myself, seeing if I know the names. But
so it's like if you don't, Bryan and I have a long relationship, and we talk pretty regularly until the last few months. And we go into all sorts of directions. So it's the theology we share with everybody, but we talk shop, we talk business, all this kind of stuff. So, where to go to even begin catching up is kind of tough. But before we get too far away from Martyr's faith, I want to mention that again. And then the story you started with, it reminds me of a little bit. So this couple, lifelong Lutherans, but sort of like, wait, how do we, this is awesome, right? They dig in, they learn it, they find more. That's a sad thing in some ways. And one of the questions I'm always wrestling with in my head is how and why does this happen? And how can we prevent it from happening again? And I don't know that there necessarily is a way. The history of decline and reformation in the church is centuries old. And I'm not just talking Luther. It's something that happens all the time. So it's just we have to be on guard and know it's going to happen. But with that said, we are also seeing, I think, a really cool opportunity for not only Lutherans to rediscover what they know because of online resources or whatnot, But then I'm having these trickles now here in Rockford of people who are not from a Lutheran background, are from a Christian background, and are starving. And they've grown up somehow in churches that maybe once had a little more foundational Protestant theology, but don't anymore. And I don't know what's causing them individually to recognize these things, but I know that at least one group has come in because of Pirate Christian Radio, one family. And what's kind of neat to see this is I'm just thinking of one lady now in particular who she's so interested in everything that she wants to know what the where the liturgy comes from, right? Like to the minutest detail. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even know this. But there's this book called Gathered Guests. It's only about 7 billion pages long and a textbook, really, a reference book, an encyclopedia. We have a copy right here. I've never been able to read it. So if you want, it's out of my hands, and she's like halfway through it in a week later and just loving it, right? And that's cool to me. It's that hunger. And my hope is that hunger is not unique nor uncontagious, but that we're seeing a public face of churches in America decline, but maybe we're not. Maybe we're only seeing the veneer decline, and we're at a place where there's a buy-in or an ingathering that's I don't know, more substantial. Is that pie in the sky?
No, it's not. It's not pie in the sky. It's right, 100% right. That there. I mean, and we ought to know it because remember, the Lord's kingdom is always being established. But the problem is we don't see it, or we just get little tiny glimpses of it because for whatever reason, the Lord has decided that we should only get little tiny glimpses of it. That's the way it works. And so we have to continue to walk by faith, and we have to say, I believe in the Holy Christian and Apostolic Church, even though we don't see it. But you get these little glimpses of it, and it's really quite wonderful because there's like 3 layers of optimism that we ought to have. Number one, the chief layer of optimism is that Jesus sits on the throne, that the ascension stands true, that Jesus rules in the church. That's number one. Number two, that the bad stuff that we see, or the little glimpses of good stuff that we see because Jesus wants us to see it. I remember this is one of the John Kleinig strategy, when he says, when I learn something bad about a friend of mine, or when I see something bad about my pastor or something like this, I ought to ask the question, why has Jesus let me learn that? Because obviously it's distressing. So why has Jesus let me learn that? And probably the reason is not so that we could gossip about it or whatever, probably the reason is so that we could pray and bless. This is why Jesus lets us know these things, so that everything that we know about the church, about its failures and about its successes, Jesus has curated that knowledge to us for a particular purpose, for our prayers, for our faith, for our encouragement, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the kind of second layer of hope. But then the third layer of hope, and this is a sort of very practical layer, but as churches, as the culture continues to wear away at the churches, those that have the lasting foundations start to show themselves as true. So that it's like walking around. In some ways, like visiting churches in the United States in the 50s was walking around a movie set, and they all had this very impressive front, but it was just, there's no actually substance there. But then the hurricane of the culture has come through, and the actual buildings have stood, and all the fake veneers are starting to teeter. And the Lutheran Church is an actual church. It has the actual truth of the actual words of Jesus. And so as the storm of culture is knocking over all the veneer of all these other churches, our doctrine stands. It's so not, I've this growing conviction that if we just can hold up Luther, there's no theologian that can hold a candle to that guy outside of the prophets and the apostles. He is the greatest. So we just hold up Luther, and it stands. It continues to stand the test of time. It won't be blown over. So we're we who have this great treasure of law and gospel and our Lutheran doctrine are in a beautiful place now at the end of the world when the storms of culture are knocking everything else around. At some point we might be the only church standing.
Well, we are. Yeah, I don't want to say we are, but I'm wrestling with the word Lutheran a lot still, just because its meaning is so vacuous, and so in a sense, there is only one church standing. Period. There is no other church. There's one church, and it's the church that has the doctrine of the apostles and the prophets, the cornerstone being Jesus Christ, the head. And outside of that, there is no church. And then you have all these little communions, gatherings, whatever they are, congregations. We don't have words in English that really do this well. I don't know how much better German really was. But there are these assemblies of people that call themselves churches. But that word also is so vacuous. It means many different things to many different people. And off of your point, there is only one church that stands, and we are it. That doesn't mean the LCMS. That doesn't mean, my nonprofit organization that called me here to Rockford. But it does mean the people who receive the prophets and apostles in that place.
Right.
We're the only church. And it doesn't mean there's no other only church in Rockford. There are other only churches in Rockford, but they're not different churches.
Right.
Or if they are, right? If they really are, then they're not Christian. And I'm not going to say that. So, man, that's some deep stuff right there. The Una Sancta and what that means when you see division outwardly in the body that is united inwardly in Christ, and how to overcome that. And that's all sorts of stuff worth chasing. I don't know if you want to respond to that, but. Yeah, I got other directions to go. Do you want to respond to that?
I mean, the summary of it all is that we have great reason to be optimistic. And as the Lord gives us these little glimpses, I mean, just think. So, I mean, and to mention specifically, I mean, the work of Pirate Christian that Chris is doing over there. I mean, everywhere I go, I meet people, and they are Lutheran now, or Christian now, maybe even because of the work that he's doing. So God be praised for that. I mean. He's out there on the edge, on the raggedy, nasty edge of all the crazy stuff in the church and doing great work. And to think that, it's happening here in Austin, it's happening there in Rockford, it's happening all over, but you don't see it all, but we trust that the Lord is working. And this summer now, so we haven't caught up on this, because this is one of the things that happened to me this summer, is I got to see that in phenomenal ways. First in Spain, we went to see the missionaries there and recognize that the church in Spain, the Lutheran church in Spain, is 20 years old, and it was started mostly by Lutherans, by people who were converted and catechized by Lutheran missionaries in South America, and then immigrated to Spain, and then needed a Lutheran pastor and reached out to the Missouri Synod. And this is how this is incredible. And in fact, a bunch of the guys there are still, there's a big Venezuelan and Argentinian connection between the Lutheran church in Spain and the South America. And so to see that is really wonderful. And then I went to the Corpus Christi, which you have been to before. I went to Sweden to the Corpus Christi. And so here's 19 young Lutherans, young confessional Lutherans from 19 different countries. I think there's 260 of them there. And pastors from everywhere, from Romania, from Russia, from Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark and Germany and Italy and England and Latvia and Israel. Met a man who his family was there. He grew up Jewish, lives in Tel Aviv, became a Christian, and ran into a Lutheran missionary, and is working towards being a Lutheran pastor. Incredible theologian in Tel Aviv. So we've got to see that kind of the birth of the Lutheran Church in Israel, the birth of the Lutheran Church in Italy, the birth of the Lutheran Church in Spain, in a lot of ways the rebirth of the Lutheran Church in the Nordic countries. It makes your heart swell. It's incredible.
Coming out of that, I guess, sort of a tangent, but sort of in that direction, the riches that we have one of the things I've been, I don't know if it's convicted on or just had a revolution in my own head on, and I don't know yet how to practice this, and maybe it's been a longer growth for me, and I'm only just being aware of it now. But I started to ask the question, what if all the things that we're so ashamed of as Lutherans are actually like the coolest things we have?
I saw you post that on Twitter, that closed communion is the greatest gift for evangelism.
I got a video coming out today where I ponder that more. And then this will be released tomorrow, so it'll follow on it. That's exactly it. Like, what if and I'm not even asking for everybody else, I'm asking in my own head, what if I could just think, like authentically believe that my closed communion statement or announcement is awesome? It's just like, you who aren't communing here, you should think me saying this is really cool, that you can't come up. Like you should, that's what we think. We think it's really cool that you don't get to commune with us yet. And just to shift the emotion in my own head, because I've always felt bad about it. It's like I'm making an apology for it every time. Oh, this is a true doctrine, but nobody likes it. Well, why? I mean, that's true, I think, and that nobody likes it. So what if we were to shift that? What if we were less afraid of who we were and believe there was something maybe there we just haven't seen yet?
I think I've got two positive and one negative thing to say about this. Let's see. Positive first. On the secular level, there's all these studies about, for example, Chick-fil-A. Have you seen any of this stuff?
Not directly, other than they kill chickens and not cows, and they smell like hate apparently to some people. But otherwise, yeah.
Andrew, my son, just got a job at Chick-fil-A. That everyone. So they're closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it turns out that they're being closed on Sunday is probably a large part of their success, because it creates because it's not 24/7.
Yeah.
Because there's a time when it is not accessible.
Yeah.
It adds value to the thing.
Supply demand, man. Supply demand.
And so there's something about that when we're not sort of falling over ourselves to be accessible, that it is just, if nothing else, it's a confession of the value of the thing that we've had. I've often said that if we had, like, instead of having the Lord's body on the patent, if we had like $1,000 gold coins, and instead of having the Lord's blood in the chalice, we had like rolled up $1,000 bills, the elders would have no problem practicing closed communion.
Yeah, right.
I mean, who are these visitors? They didn't sign up, did they?
No, why are they getting?
But we have something of incredible worth that Jesus wants to be distributed. Excuse me, but in a careful way. But there's something else I think more profound that has to do with the spiritual warfare, and that is, and we might have talked about this before. In Psalm 4, David says, "How long will you turn my glory into shame?" And so there's this tactic that the devil does. It's a sneer tactic. Instead of actually just actually arguing against something, he just makes us embarrassed about it. Like we're supposed to be embarrassed that we think that marriage is a man and a woman, or embarrassed that we think that communion should be closed, or embarrassed that whatever, so he makes us ashamed of his truth. And it's a spiritual. So the thing that we should be most boastful of, that we're baptized, that we belong to Jesus, we are become embarrassed about. This is a demonic tactic.
I think I just realized that my microphone, that's a great comment. This is recording through the wrong mic on mine. How do I change that on this thing? All right, so we just fixed a microphone problem. I don't like negative self-talk. I found out that I say lots of really mean things to myself in my head, like "you're an idiot." And while it's actually true sometimes, it's not really helpful.
Say it out loud.
It's not helpful, right? It's not helpful. And
I can't believe you were using the wrong microphone, Pastor Fisk. Yeah, right. I'm so disappointed in you.
Well, I did this in a video. You wanted to ask about video competition. I did this in a video earlier this week where I was trying to do kind of a hybrid
Mad Christian Everbook one, and so I went to a different camera to look at the Everbook stuff, and apparently I had done something where I turned the mic off on that viewpoint, but only on that viewpoint. So there was sound, and then there wasn't sound, and I literally went for like 12 minutes with no sound. And what's amazing is that I had about 35 people still there watching and having a conversation. And I finally noticed it when it said, someone, I looked at the comments because I hadn't been looking, and it said like don't tell him, he'll feel bad. and, and I'm like, wait, well, don't tell me what. And then it all made sense. And they're like, no, it's okay, Pastor Fisk, we like you, it's fine.
They're like,
again sometime.
I'd rather look at the Everbook than hear what you're saying.
Well, I got a nice email from a guy who said, hey, you shouldn't feel bad. What you should realize is that you've got a group who likes watching you, who also like each other so much that they hung out while you were not there.
That is amazing.
Right? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I thought that was a great insight, I think, on his part too. So, all right, we were talking about the closed communion thing. Let me throw one more idea at you. You can just say this is cool or not cool, but as I'm wrestling with, so how do I put this into practice? One of the thoughts I've had is we have an announcement period, generalized announcements before the service starts. I say, hey, good morning, everybody. Grace, mercy, peace to you. And there's going to be a quilting thing, blah, blah, blah. And usually that's where in the closed communion announcement goes or has gone in the past. And I'm grateful that when I got here, it's a habit that they had, that it was already there and established. And then there's been such a need for announcements due to things going on here in Rockford in the last 3-4 months that I've forgotten to do it, and I don't say it all the time. And I had one of my younger men, God bless him, say, "Hey, did we stop doing that for a reason?" And I was like, "No, I just forgot." But so I'm thinking about how to start it again, but to be more intentional about it. And my thought had been, rather than do it there, to do it after the offering and the prayers before the proper preface, to actually have a moment before we do the supper itself, and treat it a little more like the ancient service, right? Where you would have the service of the word, service of the sacrament, and you would literally usher people out for the service of the sacrament. I'm not going to go that far, but to have that explanation right there. And then in that space, I would want to liturgize it in some way, right? I want to come up with about 5 sentences that I have memorized that I just deliver, not as if rote, right? But that take us through what it means. And that's a whole nother question about what those sentences are. But what do you think about that? Because that is, that's adding to the liturgy.
I would,
right?
I would do it. I'm all for adding to the liturgy. I would do it that during Easter time, because we had this sort of dramatic opening to the service, so I wouldn't have the chance to make the communion announcement beforehand. So I would do it. There is actually a liturgical place for announcements before the prayer of the church, and a lot of times that's when you announce the death of a member. You announce weddings and things like that. And
is that in the hymnal? Is that in the rubrics?
Yeah, it's in the rubrics.
Oh wow!
I wonder where to find that. So that's the place for it. It's a great place for it. So that's when I would make that announcement during Easter, and I would expand it. So my normal communion announcement is something like this. We have the privilege of celebrating the supper today, where Jesus is our host and our meal. That means he gives us his body and blood for the forgiveness of all of our sins. And Jesus wants, and we also want, all people to commune with us at his altar. But we believe that unity of teaching comes before unity of communion. So if you're not a member of our congregation or a sister congregation, please talk with me before coming to the supper. And then at Easter time, I would add, if you're visiting with us and you're baptized and you'd like to come for a blessing, please feel free, and if you're comfortable, and you can indicate so by crossing your hands. And if you are not baptized, please don't leave without first talking to me. And I think I probably had 3 baptisms come out of that announcement.
Oh, that's sweet.
In my 14 years at Hope. And so, what I'm trying to do with that, I mean, you see the rhetorical thing there, is the devil loves to make ministers of the gospel say no. But to say, look, this is yes, but not yet. That's what we gotta say. Just like we want to teach our children about, for example, the joys of intimacy. It's yes, but not yet. So with the Lord's Supper, it's yes, but not yet. There's things that come first.
I really like the order that you had there, and I like the movement to baptism as well. It's good. I'm messing with in my head again, or recovering for myself, or asking what it means. Just the idea of holiness as something that's not righteousness. And I've been on this ticket for a while with all the how do we argue about the law with our inner Lutheran debates and whatnot, and sanctification, which is a word that certainly can refer to your growth in righteousness, but it comes from this word holiness, and holiness is such a different thing than righteousness. Ultimately, they're definitely connected, and they both are from God, but they're different words. And to recover the kind of ground level, most central teaching that the holiness of the church is the body of Jesus himself, physically risen from the dead, and that approaching this comes with fear and trembling, and also a total justification given. And to capture that idea liturgically, experientially, it's not just, hey, let's like check it off on a box, we're all holy now, but that this space is sanctified. It is holy, and now you're coming here. Are you ready? Do you really want to? I mean, this what is it? The Lutheran satire that Feeney did way back with this is an apple, the little kindergartner. This is not an apple, and he ends up calling the Lutheran teacher, the spawn of the devil, and she's like, well, I guess you don't really want to eat this then. He's like, yeah, of course I do. So there is that. Like, do you really want this? Are you sure? And like, that's awesome. So come get it. But let's make sure. I don't know. That's just the stuff I'm playing with, and it comes back to this idea again that what if we've been not even using our best weapons because we are ashamed of them, and maybe we should be. Maybe we should not let the goats tell the sheep what their good ideas are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. There is something that is so the holiness of God it both, well, in a practical level, it attracts and it repels both. And that's, I think, what you're wrestling with. There is, but also to know that there is a reason that Jesus gives us his body and his blood, not his divine presence. So he even in the supper, it's his holiness hidden. I mean, it's like double hidden.
Mediated. I'd say mediated.
There's two layers on top. I mean, so here's the divine holiness, which was hidden in the flesh of Jesus, and now it's hidden in the bread and the wine. So there's two sort of layers that Jesus.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, and I think I know what you're trying to protect. I just don't want. I don't know. It is right. It still is by the unity of the person, by the sacramental union. It is absolutely not like the unveiled eternal. But it is eternal. It's not the unveiled holiness of God. That would just demolish all creatures. Forget sinners, right? Just all creatures couldn't handle that. The angels are like veiling their faces. So yeah. But then this is the mystery of the union, right? The personal union, not just of Christ, but now the mystical union. There we go. Is that holiness is now one with us in the flesh.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And then you can go one further with, at the moment, through faith alone, that my physical flesh, while holy in Jesus completely, is still rotten and dying. But the faith alone is the reason it is holy, because that faith resides in the spirit, within the heart, or within the mind, or wherever the spirit is in your body. I don't know. I've got this. There's a whole other thing now, Brian. I'm big on this idea. I'm convinced of this, that we don't have souls and bodies, that we are souls that are bodies. And this idea that they're separate is just such a lie. Now, maybe I'm a heretic on that one.
Right. Now there is a way. There is a way that it's. I think you can make a distinction, but you're right. Is that to say that the soul and body are separate for sure is a theology of death. I mean, that's because they were never ever meant to be separate. I think, but I see what you're saying. I do think we need to be able to make a distinction between soul and body, even with Adam and Eve before the fall, just to be able to make the distinction between the animal and Adam and Eve. But I know exactly what you're. I think. Well, I don't know exactly, but I know what you're pushing against.
It's interesting, the distinction between the animals, although some of them have the breath of life in them too. It's totally like experimental in my own head a little bit, but I'm also really convinced of it too. This came out. I was teaching at a confirmation camp this summer, and I don't know how I even got onto it, but I had said effectively what I just said, that your body, you as a human are body and spirit conjoined as one. There is no division between you. You don't exist without your body. You are not you without your body. And yes, of course, you are not unspiritual. You are a spirit made flesh. That's the uniqueness. That's what distinguishes you from the angels, right? And so maybe, on the animal thing, I guess you could say animals are flesh without spirit. But then this great question from one of the counselors was like, well, but then when we die, we won't have bodies. So how could we still be human? And I can't attribute this to myself, but in that moment, I had an answer I'd never thought to even think up before. And I got this huge smile on my face because I learned from her through her question.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, this is the best ever, because you actually know the answer already. You know everything you need to get there. You do have a body when you die and your body's in the ground and you ascend to be at rest in Jesus. You have Jesus' body. You're not without a body in heaven. You're just without your current body, but you have his body. You are his body. And the fact that we are so spiritualistic or spiritistic about that, Gnostic, about Jesus' body and what it means to be Jesus' body, that is, to me, that's death to the faith. But it is so overwhelming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I want to be even less Gnostic than you, I think, and say, because this often happens when you're standing there like the funeral home and you're looking at grandma and people say, well, they're not there anymore. You will say, well, what is that? What is that is there? What is the corpse? And it is still grandma. It is her. It's not just her body, it's her. And the soul is her. So that, like, it wasn't like when Jesus had died, Jesus was in paradise with the Father and something else was in the grave. No, Jesus was in the grave. So the body is still Jesus. And our body is still us. It's not like our identity belongs to our soul and not the body. This is the point, is that you're torn in half. You're ripped in half. So part of you is at the face of Jesus and part of you is in the grave. And it's
right. So it's like if you cut off your hand and it's lying on the ground over there and you said, well, is that your body or is this your body? It's like, well, they're both my body. Okay. Right. So your body and soul have the same unified eternal reality. You can't separate them. They're not different things.
Right.
Again, I'm just convinced of they're not different things.
Right.
And that's what makes us so unique in creation.
And this is now this is and I think this goes even deeper than we perhaps will ever know. Is how, just this there's a great mystery about how, like for example, angels are spirits. They don't have material bodies, and yet they are able to interact with the physical world. Demons and angels and all this stuff. Now how that interaction happens is a really profound mystery, but that same interaction is happening with us, in us, constantly. It's what kind of animates us and moves us, and it goes in two directions, so that the things of our soul or whatever affect our body, but also the things of our body also affect our soul. So that there's there's a spiritual danger to, for example, to fornication. We're not just, or what? Let
me go further, man. There's a spiritual danger to the substances you put in your body, whether medical, chemical, or nutritional. You can make yourself depressed by what you drink.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? So it's not as though there's this radical, hard, even Nestorian, if you know that word, division between our body and soul. So that what's part of got me going this way is, oh man, there's just so many pieces, Brian. The part of the problem is the word soul in English. It is just the non-biblical meaning. Like Peter will use the word pneuma, and he means it, but it has less baggage than, say, the English soul today does. And it's maybe a crazy thing, I think, is less Greek. Like soul now really just means what the Greek philosophers meant when they would distinguish in pre-Gnostic, I guess, Platonic ways, right? The real human from the kind of fleshly human or whatever. And so we don't have a really better English word. Spirit maybe gets there a little bit. And then you go back and you get the nephesh from Hebrew, right? Which we also translate as soul, but it's just a terrible translation of nephesh, which means like life essence, right? Or it's the whole person, body and soul. There's no distinction there. And so I'm trying to find so what's the word that we could use? And this is the heretical part again. The word that actually does it, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding this word's context, is the word chi or ki. This Eastern word for your body energy or your life essence, which is not part of your body, and it's not some weird spirit that's separate from you. It's a way of just describing your entire existence, including the energy that you have, right? And so they talk about it being spiritual. When the martial artists, right? We'll talk about focusing the spirit, and we get all in a huff about that. Rightly so, I suppose, because we have a lot of baggage with the word spirit, and so they're using that differently than we would, and we don't want to adopt that error. But there's something about their way of just viewing the unity of the human person, which I think is far more biblical, frankly, than most Americans view their own person. And I'm not saying I'm going to start using the word chi all the time, but I we have to find a way to come back to this, I think.
I think if I understand the Eastern guys, this is the problem, is that is even going to fall short. I mean, it might even fall shorter because they have no doctrine of the resurrection. In fact, they might even have the idea of the illusion of the body. That you are.
Well, it depends. Yeah, maybe. And that's definitely a threat. I'm not saying there's no threats. And I'm not saying we should just adopt the word. Although in my own head, it's a little helpful for me as I try to wrestle through some stuff. But I don't know that they, if you get into real Buddhism, right, there is like this non-existent stuff. But that's such a big tent. Eastern thought's a big tent. Lots of random stuff in there. And at least the way that the nutritionists will go with chi, they don't even care about what you're worried about. Like that's just not. It never goes there. They're only concerned about seeing that there is a unity between your body and your emotions, or your energy levels, or your ability to see clearly at the moment, as opposed to be overwhelmed, right? And all that does, I think, is just affirm that there's not this hard division between soul and body.
Right.
That you are a body as a soul. And that leads in all sorts of other directions, which, my whole recent get up is first article. Hello. And so maybe I'm overboarding on that right now in your direction, but
no, it's I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as that goes, that should be obvious to humans, but we are under this weird delusion of the mind as a computer. That's the kind of governing metaphor that we have, and we should it's probably just easy enough to point that out and say it's wrong to think that way. But it's all over in popular thought, and the idea of being able to like upload your soul and all this kind of nonsense is just delusional. But that's part of the Eastern problem, that we that it's like that the soul is a network kind of thing. But the idea of the sort of like the rough edges of the soul is important, because even just for us to understand the reality of marriage, the two become one, and to recognize the fact that two individuals can be joined together as one is really important. So I got a couple of books I need to read on this, but one is Dr. Kleinig wrote a book on the theology of the body. And another buddy of mine, Father Angel Perez Lopez, he's a Catholic guy. He teaches at the seminary in Denver. He wrote a little book called the spousal meaning of the body, which is really fantastic. And both of those guys, both Kleinig and Angel, are reflecting on John Paul's theology of the body, which is, I think, probably something we ought to at least grapple with.
Yes. And that's kind of, I think that is exactly what my contention is. And all the different, mad Christian complaints right now is John Paul's idea, which I haven't studied directly, but just the concept of a theology of the body puts the finger on it. Like this, either we answer this and believe it as Christians, or we go with the world. And I don't know if it's the particular heresy of our age, but it is, because it's connected to the pneumatology, which is, I think, the particular heresy of our age. Who is the real spirit, and what does he do? But that's just it. He inhabits your body, which doesn't make you like healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? But it does redeem you out of darkness. It does make you holy, set you apart, to be able to look upon the redeemed world, the world also sanctified in Christ, unafraid of it, and loving it for what it is, like not retreating to mountaintops, lest studying the grass somehow, take away your faith. The other way around, digging into the entire thing with a fervor, knowing that God made it all, and that it is to be understood in order to be used to benefit your neighbor, in order that your neighbor might ask, "Who is your God?" And that you might say to your neighbor who your God is. And that pattern to me seems to be sorely lacking from ecclesiology, from missiology. The evangelicals almost do it sometimes with their demographic studies and whatnot, but there's no substance there. There's no body there, because Jesus' body and blood are not part of the whole deal. And so it ends up just turning into a rave fest or a revival fest. But it's huge, Brian. It's just huge.
I love I don't know if you see this about yourself, but I love to watch you sort of wander into a field and you're just sort of looking around and you're like, wow, look at this, look at this, look at this. And then you look up and nobody's around. And then you're like, and you start to get nervous. And you're like, hey, how come I'm the only one looking around in this sort of thing? And then you start to say, hey, don't get mad at me for being over here. And then you say, well, you guys should be over here too.
Yeah. Well,
oh man, I love it. Sorry.
I had a council meeting on Monday night. There was I forget what it was, the topic, but there was a small problem to solve, and I was like, well, why don't we do this? I could share this, actually, what it was. So we want to have multiple recordings of our safe combination, right? And your financial secretary has one in his head. Okay, well, if he dies, where's the other one, right? And trying to figure out how do we keep that safe? And obviously you can't put it in the safe, because that's what you need to get into. You need to have a double blind or whatever, a double way in. And so it's like, well, obviously you could get a lockbox, right? Well, it's $120 a year or so to do that at the bank, but it would work, but it's a cost. And I was like, so what if we just called another local LCMS congregation and asked to keep it in their safe? And everyone just stared at me, and the words that came out of I think it was my treasurer's mouth was, well, that would be an out of the box solution. And I'm starting to just embrace that I guess I do that without realizing it. Is the first place I look is where you're not looking, which can be dangerous. I mean, it certainly can be dangerous, but to me, that was the most obvious solution ever. Was we have safes in town? Why not share it?
No, I know you always do that. It's great. You're like, then you do this funny thing. I mean, it's great. It's kind of endearing to me, I think, but that's not meant to be patronizing. But you're working on how to preach differently, but then it's not like, hey, here's how I want to preach differently, but it's like, everybody has to either preach differently with me, or I've got to defend the way that I'm preaching differently. Or
wow, I'm still a sinner, Brian. I still got to justify myself.
Just preach different,
and I'm also still a pietist. So I can't I can't exercise a freedom without demanding everyone else exercise it too, or refrain.
Like some sort of legalistic pietism. Oh man, it's great.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that's not in me.
Well,
it's
no,
there.
it's probably
my best
no. Look,
construction.
here's it's you do.
I like sharing
you
stuff,
love
man. I like
you
sharing
love
good
your
stuff.
neighbor, and so whenever you're not whenever there's not a kind of a people crowded around you. I mean, not physically. I'm talking about tactically or theologically or in your meditation or whatever. Then you want, if you found something good, you want other people to be enjoying it with you. So it's good. I mean, you have good instincts.
What I think we've talked about this before. What I'm tired of, honestly, I don't like this at all, is when, and this kind of goes back to your first comment about the two people with the story, is when people say to me, Pastor Fisk, thank you so much. You speak the gospel in such a way, or you speak the word of God in such a way, unlike any other pastors. And I want to pull my hair out of my head, because either that's a lie, the devil's saying to make me boastful, or there's something that we haven't been taught to do as pastors that I got my finger on, but can't possibly be just my personality. It can't be just that. And I don't want people to give me that comment anymore. I hate that comment. But that comment goes par for the course with, hey, let's put stuff online that people can find it and understand. And I get it. If they're like coming from a big box revivalist church, of course they're not going to have anybody speak it like this. But then I have friends, other Lutheran pastors, who complain about nobody will listen to them, how everyone thinks their class is boring, and all this. I'm like, well, I'm not convinced it has to be that way. Right? You're just such a bad personality. No one wants to listen to you. It'll take some work. You got to, try a few different things, maybe unlearn what you think you learned. So that's for me, that's like it's a personal battle against the temptations of my own ego, I suppose. That I don't want that comment. I want people to say, that's great. You did it. I'm going to go back to my church where he does it too. Right. That's what I want. So, but of course, that's my justification of myself again, but can't escape that. Dude, you got to go at noon. Is that right?
No, 1:00.
Oh, we got lots of
time. I got to go. I got to talk about the book on issues at 1:00. I got loads of time.
Okay. So
I got to go and read my book to figure out what I wrote, and then I can.
Well, we never did get back to that. We don't have to go into it in detail, but I do want to say the cover is sweet. That is a sweet looking cover, man.
I'm glad you like it.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I'm jealous.
My idea for the cover was totally different, but it wasn't apparently that good. I still like it was a line, just a straight line across like a horizon, and then it was an outline of a dude standing in front of a huge lion, and then the line continued. Just a small little guy standing face to face with a lion.
That reminds me of one of my favorite pictures of biblical art. It's an image of Daniel in the lion's den. And you can find this if you just Google it real quick. Probably he's an old man, and he's standing. He's looking up, and there's this light in the corner, and the lions are behind him. He's got his back to the lions, his hands behind his back, patiently just looking up at the light. And the lions are off in the corner in darkness, but they're creeping toward him. But the biggest one's like low and like creeping toward him, but not looking at him. The lion's like looking up at the light too, and it's afraid. And I absolutely adore that picture, and it would fit with Martyr's Faith in a what's the rest of the title? Martyr's Faith
in a faithless world.
Faithless world. Well, I'm thankful that you got this thing out, and it's going to be there. I think it's going to be full of good stories, right? You're telling a lot of martyr stories.
5 martyr stories, but that's not the main thing. And I've realized now, as people are looking at the book and they're thinking that like it's a book of the martyrs, it's really, the focus is not the martyrs, but the martyrs' faith. In other words, what is it that holds us up through suffering, through temptation, through life into death? What is it that holds us up? So it's more about the martyrs' faith than the martyrs themselves. That's, I think, the idea.
I'm just hungry for stories, so I like hearing. I know you got the martyr stories in you.
Well, I told you the story of Romanus, right?
More times than I need to hear it. That one's not my favorite. It's good, but it's just like that's kind of gross.
Here's Agatha, the story of Agatha. So Luther's favorite martyrs, I'm convinced, are Agnes and Agatha, these two young girls. Agatha being, one of them was 13 and the other was like 21, so young girls. And they both, at different accounts in their martyrdom, they both are dancing. And Agatha, I always get them mixed up, but I believe it's Agatha dances to prison and Agnes actually dances to the stake, as if the story tells it like this, as if she's going to a wedding. And it's a profound picture that captured Luther's imagination and captures ours as well, that there's because of what Christ has done for us, there's actually a true joy in death. It's incredible.
I want to dig into Cyprian more. He's been my kind of recent thing, but I got so much in the air I can't pay attention to him. But his story seems pretty cool to me. And anyway, the whole idea of looking at these ancient witnesses and seeing how their fearlessness by faith enabled them to stand against the world, that can only encourage those of us who are watching a collapse. Who knows? I posted, I found Hootsuite again. It's been like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I started messing with it, and I tweeted a bunch of Charles Dickens, because it'd been on my head, off and on for about 2 weeks, that opening line, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times," is such a powerful description of every moment in history. And it started with, well, that describes us right now. Like, to be living in this country right now, like, you got it as good as anyone's ever had it. And yet it's like everyone's freaking out, right? We can have a civil war and all shoot each other because of Orange Man and stuff. I mean, it's just nuts. Racism and all this is nuts. So it's like the best of times, the worst of times. Oh, look at that. But then it's kind of always that. I mean, he wrote that so long ago. And for him, I don't think he was denying a belief that was really what he meant then. There wouldn't come a later, worse time. And then I'm like, well, I'll just tweet that. And I looked at the first paragraph and I looked at the last page, because I remember really loving the last page when I read the book as a kid. And so I just started, tweeting it on a scheduled thing throughout the day. And it freaked people out. People thought I was like going to commit suicide and stuff. Like they're sending me messages like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I'm like, I found Hootsuite and it's Dickens. I don't know. I'm fine. It's all right. Yeah, right. How do we get on that?
You need a Dickens intervention.
Well, yeah. But it's the confidence though. So his last lines in that book is the whole story. He's going to die for somebody else, and he's got this holy pride in what he's doing, that he doesn't mind that it's not going to go well for him, because he can see who it's going to go well for, and it's not a 1-to-1 with our own convictions, but it kind of is too. That we know that our testimony in the present age, even should we suffer, will benefit those who will join us in faith, either to strengthen what's already there or to create it and to convert. Mm-hmm. And so to have that martyr's faith, that fearlessness present right now, I think it's the ammo we need. So where can people get that? You said it's getting in the mail already?
Yeah, CPH, Amazon, and Barnes and Nobles, anywhere. The back to the truck of the guy you buy books from should be hanging around. So
right. So yeah. I before we hit to YouTube, mine is due out in February now. Assuming all things go according to plan, I have the final editor's copy in hand by the end of this week, and I'm supposed to have it back to him. I'm looking at like all the insets and titles and all this kind of stuff. Oof. And making sure I like those, because he did a number of new ones. And so but I'm excited. We went on covers, we spent a lot of time hashing out what I wanted for a cover and what they wanted for a cover, and hopefully we found something that works for everybody. And then
this
same with the title
Lord's
too.
Prayer, right?
Lord's Supper, man. Lord's Supper.
Oh,
Word without flesh, why your church is dying even though Jesus is alive.
wow.
Yeah. And what's fun about this one is I don't remember writing it. And so as I'm reading it, and you just you alluded to this before, but I'm kind of like, I don't really know it's there. And then I'm finding stuff. I'm like, oh, that's kind of good. Who wrote that? Man, that's funny. I don't remember that. Wow. Where'd that come from?
That happened to me the other day. I just kind of opened up to a random page of this book that I wrote, and I read it, and I'm like, wow. I said something about feasting on rot and asking for more or something, and I'm
yeah. I have this. I texted my wife a photo, a screenshot of this conversation the apostles have with Jesus in the upper room, trying to correct him when he says, "This is my body," and I was laughing out loud. It's so funny. And then you don't want to like you're laughing at your own jokes, right? Like that's.
What do you mean? I do that all the time.
Yeah, you do. That's true. That is an endearing feature you have.
Carrie says at least one person laughs at your jokes.
But it's more like it's great when you do a work like that and you come back to it and you have forgotten that it's there and it worked. It was like, oh, that's funny. Oh, look at that. It's great. Anyway, so I'm excited about that too. And so throw that in there, my own plug, as that's coming eventually here. YouTube competition, man. I have not been paying attention to analytics because I fell off the planet. And I know I'm looking at it now. I know I'm down from, I'd gotten up in July. I did a video almost every day and it got up past where you are, right? In terms of, daily views, cause I'm building on a different foundation than you and all this. And then, August just destroyed me.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's supposed to be the slow month. It's supposed to be the slow month, man. I didn't even go anywhere. I was traveling all July. And August was the one that beat me up.
Huh.
So I don't know, what you want to compare. I'm still getting videos out a couple a week. I started this Saturday morning chill, which I really like.
Oh, I heard about that.
Get up really early and just do a Q&A for 2 hours. And it seems to be well received. I think I'm going to start rebroadcasting it on the podcast channel just as a bonus audio because it's 2 hours long. And so that's all there. Have you had any demonetizations happening?
A couple, but not for content. I have like one of my Spain videos. I thought I grabbed some non-copyright music and it flagged it, and then I got flagged for something else. Oh no, I'm sorry. I did have a couple. I did have a martyrdom one, and then I had one about. Let's see. I just pulled it up to see what got demonetized. Oh, look! It looks like they pulled it. Oh yeah, I did one. Does God kill people? That got demonetized. And is watching horror movies a sin? That got demonetized. That's interesting. I didn't even know that. But does God kill people? That apparently got flagged. I don't know. Maybe it's terrorist or something.
I'm looking at. See, they moved us all over to the new, the updated Studio Beta, and they won't let you use the old one now. So now I'm completely lost because I was using the old one. It looks like I'm even missing some videos right now. But I have a bunch that were demonetized that are now not demonetized. They were demonetizing everything I was putting up, the moment it went up.
Huh?
Yeah, and.
This is really the statistic that I'm interested in, and that is your 48. No, your watch time minutes for the last 28 days.
Okay, hang tight real fast. Why are these? Why is it not showing me all my videos? This is weird too. I go into this
a YouTube. So the people should know that this is this is kind of nerdy but fun for us because, I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. I'm so glad you got your channel back and everything.
Oh, it's because they're live. That's why. Oh, but see, look, they're all remonetized now. Very few. That's weird because they were. That's cool. It's great. They're monetized again a month after people watched them. But that's so weird. Okay, so we'll go to analytics. I don't care about the money. What I care about is the blacklisting / it's not even, what do they call it now? Shadow banning.
Right.
The scuttling of information by Google, YouTube, Twitter, etc.
Yeah, I know.
And when that turns its eye on us, it's not it's not about money. It's about whether or not we can be heard on these platforms.
I wonder when it. I mean, I wonder at what point you're going to be getting it more than yours, just because your channel is bigger than mine.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. So okay. So what's the number you want from me?
The watch time in minutes for the last 28 days.
Okay. Yeah. So that's right up there at the top. 167.8K.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. What do you got?
291.
Yeah.
291,000.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been publishing. So
mine's up. I've been cranking out a ton. I put one out on yesterday on the difference between the Missouri Synod and the ELCA, because when I was doing my Sunday drive home, I came up with this great strategy to get the ELCA to drop the name Lutheran, and that is to just remind them that Luther was a white guy.
That's funny. I like that.
And so I thought, well, let's just leverage their intersectionality for our own benefit. And man, I was laughing at myself. And but someone that thought I was being a little smug, so I made a video yesterday about the difference between the LCMS and the ELCA with a couple of clips from their convention and stuff like this, and that's gotten a lot of attention now. So now, but I've been the last couple of days been sitting there watching videos of the ELCA. What a mess! But anyway,
I'm sorry that you had to do that. Yeah, I just don't even pay attention to that stuff.
Now the other thing I want to know about. So I got like three more things to talk about that I want to
hold on fast though. There's shouldn't we, the old analytics you could see like average watch length. That's the number I kind of care about. But where do you find that in the new one though? I don't see it.
I don't know. I'm looking at my phone.
Oh yeah. All right.
Average view duration is what it's called.
That's what I want.
And yeah, so I've got 9 minutes, 18 seconds.
There it is. Okay, 9 minutes, 59 seconds. So I beat you by a minute.
Oh man.
Yeah, half a minute.
You did.
You got it, man. You're more winsome than I am. I'm going radical. I'm going underground. Rogue. The rogue edge.
I got 4,000 subscribers now. Not that matters, but so
no,
that's the thing.
I don't know what that's at now. I mean, I'm cheating when I use that number. Where is my subscriber?
Yeah, because you started at like 10.
Well, and it's 11,743.
Yeah, you're still killing me.
It's nice to see new subscribers coming in, though. I mean, that number's up and has stayed up since I started posting again. So that's a cool thing.
It is cool. It's an amazing this YouTube thing. Okay, so the other thing I want to tell you about is I'm coming to Davenport, Iowa, which I realized is like right down the road from you.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
September. That's Pastor Golter, his church there, and I'm coming for a conference like September 21, 22 that weekend, hanging out on Sunday. So I might be flying into Chicago, which means I'm like driving by Rockford to get over there.
If you come a day early, hang out, man.
I'm thinking about it. Or you could, I don't know if you guys, the family, want to hang out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, in Davenport, the trickle there will be, what weekend is that? It's tough. From that weekend through October, there's amplified action happening every weekend as we gear up toward a big stewardship thing. And with everything else that's been going on here in Rockford and with St. Paul this year, and most of this is not public if you're outside of Rockford, it's just, this is the most essential 3 months, 5 months in the life of this parish in the last 30 years probably. And it's all good, I think, ultimately, but I can't take my hand off the wheel.
Yep.
Right now, because it's like the next 20 or 30 or 40 or longer years is sort of what we do in the next 3 months. And maybe that's a little boastful or bold, but it is from a strictly business perspective. It's just huge.
I hear you.
I'm happy to hang out on a Saturday afternoon, but I'm not sure I can drive somewhere and then try to get back and pull other stuff off. But we'll see. I'll try to get on my calendar.
This is the other thing I want to tell you about. I used for the first time 99 Designs. Have you tried that service yet?
Sweet. Yes, I have. Our church logo has been made with that. It's the only one I've actually gone all the way through. It's great though.
Yeah. And then here's two other things. I'm interested in your 430 deal. But then I also want to talk about the theology of delight and the energy of the convert. Those are the two things I wrote down when we just started this conversation. So I don't know if you...
Yeah, you sent that in email to me about the 430. You had asked about something else from my last podcast there. Oh, it was like the the affirmations, right? The statements of conviction.
Yeah. We were talking about that's right. I was thinking about those too.
Well, because I've talked about, I don't know, how many of my podcasts have you listened to? I mean, you obviously listen to that one. I usually assume you don't, so I was a little surprised.
No, I don't. I listened to that one, and because I thought, man, I haven't talked to Fisk for a while.
So if I stop having conversations with you, you might listen to my podcast. That's funny. So first off,
I wonder how long we would have to not talk for you to listen to Table Talk.
Oh goodness, God bless Table Talk.
I might be dead.
Yeah.
And then, well, I guess I'll listen to Table Talk.
There is like when I got into Tim Ferriss the first time, I still listen, but not as much. Really into Joe Rogan right now, on and off, depending on the guest. But when I first listened to Tim Ferriss, somewhere in the first 6 or 8 episodes I listened to is an interview he does with a guy named Jocko Willink. And Tim basically catapulted Jocko into his own mini level of fame. He's got his own podcast. He's got a business consulting thing. Jocko is a Navy SEAL and a complete, I don't know how to say it, badass. He is just the scariest man you ever met.
I saw him on the for heaven's sakes, who's this guy who I love who used to do the daily vlog? Casey Neistat. Okay. He was on Casey Neistat's blog. Yeah, I know Jocko.
Yeah. So the interview with him is really good. And Jocko, he's famous for this, but what he did before this that was stunning is he was the kind of the major, I don't know what position it was as the SEAL, but linchpin leader for the Battle of Fallujah in Iraq, which is probably the worst fighting that we ever saw over there. And it was a completely lost cause when his unit entered, and they ended up, taking back the city, creating safety for the people who live there and whatnot. I mean, he's just he not only talks the talk, he walks the walk when it comes to doing what you say and having a way to get it done. And anyhow, so the interview with him is great, and he's inspiring in that regard because he just doesn't take no for an answer. I love this one. He has a trained response to all bad things and all problems, right? So you come to him and you say, "Hey, Jocko, our SUV is on fire right now because it got hit by a rocket, and there are hordes of unicorn bears coming over the hills as well. They may be the demons from the book of Revelation." And he'll say, "Good." Like, that'll be his response. Good. Okay. So no matter what problem comes, his first word is good. And then he proceeds to discover what to do about it, believing that it's good, which I love that about. It's just like, don't let it phase you, right? We got a plan. We got an answer. We can handle it. Anyhow, so you can go listen to Jocko if you want.
Yeah, that's something. There's something to martyr's faith there too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something that you get the sense that that's what St. Paul does. It's like, here's some suffering.
Yeah.
He says.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
He's joy. He says joy. Here's death. Joy. Yeah. This is thanks.
Well, that moment when like they're about to stone him and like he gets put in cuffs and the Roman guard is like carrying him like over their heads and people are trying to grab him down and tear him to pieces and they get him out of the crowd in the temple and he's like, hey, hold on a second. They're like, what? He's like, can I talk to everybody first before you put me back there? Can I preach a little bit? Like, he wants to stay. It's crazy. So yes. And I don't believe Jocko actually is a Christian. But there's something there too, just in the duty of the created order that has that same understanding of the good and the fearlessness. And so you can find it through natural law to an extent. I would say that the Christian one is unique and holy, saving as well. But so Jocko, on that episode with Tim Ferriss, shares about how he gets up every morning at 4:30, and that's the time he gets up, and every day he takes a picture of his watch at that time and posts it on Instagram, and then goes and works out and goes from there with the rest of his day. And Tim's kind of like, well, why do you do that? And his answer, I don't want to put words in his mouth directly, but as I remember, it's real narrow, but it's along the lines of, because if I really believe that I'm going to fight and win, I need to be ready. And that struck with me way back when. This is like 2-3 years ago. as both amazing and enviable and ludicrous, like completely ludicrous, to do that. He also talked about how, and I thought this was an interesting thing. He said, because I know on the other side of the world at that time, there's a guy with a gun, a rifle, squatting down in a cave, rocking back and forth, getting ready for me. And that's the warrior in him a little bit. So translate all of that for half a moment outside of a battle for American world hegemony to an awareness of our Christianity and the enemy who prowls like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. And it does have some real, I think, not encouraging really, but actually accusing application. Like, do we take this beautiful war seriously or not? Mm-hmm. And so anyhow, so that's like way back, right? But I'm a night owl with sleep apnea. Yeah, I don't get up early in the morning, and so I forgot it entirely about the thing. And I don't know how it came about again, but that I remembered it. But I do know this, and this is the weirdest thing, Brian. And I'm gonna say this very carefully because I am not a doctor. I have no official training, but in my attempt to find a better nutritional pattern for the sake of dealing with high insulin sugar levels, or bad insulin, high sugar levels, a metabolic system run amok thanks to the standard American diet, and cholesterol that seems weird and a bit out of control. I'm looking at 3-4 years of trying to figure that thing out somehow without just going straight on to pharmaceuticals and believing that I could at the very least lose some weight. So that process has been a slow change for me, and I can thank Tim Ferriss for some of that. He got me off of processed grains and ended up in kind of a paleo wild diet for a while, and things were better. But then Will Whedon, who right? Pastor Will Whedon, who will have a new podcast from Lutheran Public Radio coming out soon.
I just heard that yesterday. I mean, I knew.
Did it start?
I was guessing that was happening, but finally I got it confirmed.
Oh, you didn't even know it had happened? Yeah. They announced that like a month ago. So it should be starting, I think, this fall. It's a daily podcast, 15 minutes on a text, just him. I'm planning to try to assign it as like homework for confirmation parents to listen to it. Anyhow. So I was somehow on his Twitter feed. I do follow him on Twitter, and somehow I ended up on his actual feed, and I saw his description of himself, and I can't remember all of it, but it was like pastor, something carnivore. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I think I know what that means, even though I've never seen that before. And so at the Issues Etc. conference, I asked him about it. I was like, so tell me about this carnivore thing. Like, isn't too much protein bad for you? Because I'm assuming it meant you eat a lot of meat, right? And he goes, oh no, listen to this podcast, this podcast, and it's great. And I'm like, all right. So I started listening to these couple different podcasts, and they got me to say, okay, well, I'll try this. I will go and I will eat red meat because it's full of vitamins and nutrients and everything you could get for your body that you might need a supplement for is in theory in portion in good red meat if you can grass fed and whatnot. And I will eat some healthy fats, some good butter, nice good saturated fat in there and whatnot. And I'll try this for a month or two and just see what happens. And I'll eat some fish. I eat fish for lunch and whatnot. But it's basically meat and dairy, meat and fat. I mean, I'll have like coconut oil or whatnot. And dude, like I lost 25 pounds in 2 months. I started strength training in the morning for fun, which is not me. And I started waking up at 4:30 in the morning. I just wake up. I'm ready to go. Boom. Let's go. Let's get this day going. It's the most weird thing. I mean, I'm not promising anybody, if you try this, I can't guarantee this happens to you, but I have no other explanation for this. It is so not my sleep cycle. And I'm falling asleep about 9:30 or 10, which is pretty early for me. But that 6.5 hours is doing it, where before this I needed 8 or 9. And again, I'm waking up, I'm energized, I'm sharp, and I got no other explanation, none. So that's it. That's it right there. But so I'm like there at 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, well, heck, Jocko did it. I'll take a few pictures. I'm probably not going to keep that going every day, but that was it. It is. I love mornings, man. When you get up before the sun and you get the testosterone rush of a strength training workout, which I do that in about 15, 20 minutes. I got a very 80-20 style regime, and you do that, and if you get outside. And I do my mindfulness resiliency training there as well. And you open your eyes and you beat the sun by that point. But in the next 20 minutes, the sun's coming up. There is a peace. It's not a Jesus peace, but there is a created order peace that is unlike anything I've ever experienced anywhere else. It's just the right time to be alive. And that I'm addicted to that now, actually. I'm super addicted to that experience. I used to, one more thing, I'll let you respond. I used to not want to go to bed because I was afraid of the morning. So I'd stay up late doing stuff because I just didn't want the next day to come. And now I can't wait to go to bed because I want tomorrow to come.
Yep.
And I got nothing to blame except some steak, right? It's like more red meat. That was it.
That's cool.
Right? Yeah. I don't know. So it is what it is. And I'll put in the podcast notes, I'll put some links to the one podcast I found the most valuable is the Human Performance Outliers. You got a back surgeon MD out in California, and then a endurance long distance runner, not MD, guy who runs endurance long distance, 100-mile races, right? You got these two guys just talking with other doctors, right, who are studying these things, studying the American diet, and asking questions about do we really know what we think we know? Where is the science that proves these things? A lot of things were built on politics in the 50s and maybe weren't questioned or haven't been for a while. And so they're asking those questions. And so if you want the meat, not pun intended, I guess, but that they're the ones having those conversations. Yeah.
Nice. I'll look at the links. I realized that. So
you get up at 4:30 anyway, don't you? That's like all you ever do.
No. 5.
See, you're already there, man.
There's something weird about 4:59. Like I'll try to put 4:59 or 4:50 in my alarm, and I'm like, no, that's crazy. Like 5 o'clock, that's better. Talk about a weird artificial line.
Well, I had the opposite
but not
thing
this
happen.
Summer.
I had it. I was getting up at 5 for a little bit, and because I was like, and I was at the opposite thing. I was like, well, if I'm at 5, I might as well try 4:30. And then I set the alarm, but I wake up before the alarm. It's so bizarre. So like now it's like I wake up on demand with what I'm intending to wake up at the night before. But that jump from 5 to 4:30 wasn't that hard to make. Once you're making 5, I mean, it's half an hour.
It is so this summer has been, so I was in a good, I mean, when I was in good riding shape, finishing up a Martyr's Faith, probably most of last year it was 5:30, and then I'd sleep on the weekend, maybe till 7 or whatever. But it was fine. But then this summer has been very disruptive to all of my patterns, and I
warned you about that. Your move.
And so I'm just fighting back. So two long international trips, and then like 3 or 4 other trips, and moving and being kind of out of the rhythm of everything. And I broke my toe. Did I tell you that I broke my big toe?
Oh no, you didn't.
I dropped the TV.
Oh geez.
When we were moving on my big toe, and it broke the bone and then cracked it in 3 spots. Ouch. So like my first 2-3 weeks on the job, I was wearing sandals because I couldn't fit my foot in a shoe, and I don't have so I couldn't hardly walk, much less. So like a couple times we went to the gym, and like I was running, and it was bad. This was a very disruptive summer for all of that, and it feels like last week finally I'm starting to get in some habits and got some space. So that's really huge relief.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm hoping that time comes for me at some point, because I got the same problem. Yeah. I thought it would be last week and the week before, but it wasn't, and that is external things that just didn't allow it.
Mm-hmm.
How that makes me think of Everbook though. Are you just kind of exactly where you were, if you had any innovation taking place. And we haven't really done much publicly at all. And when it comes to the producing an actual product, or maybe further away than we've ever been.
No, I don't.
How's because
We're closer.
you got the prototype that we sent you.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It's great.
What'd you
We
think
just
of
can't do it. I mean, it's just not the right size. And if the guy can't make it the right size after like 3 tries, he can't be our guy.
I don't like the material on it. And the other one that I kept and used,
Yep.
I finally just abandoned it because it just, I don't know, the material just didn't make me think it was high quality. I was like, I'm done with this. So I built a 3-flap one, right? So yours is, I don't know how to describe that, or a 3. Yours is your design is 2 feet long. You fold on both sides in to create, I guess I call it 2 flaps, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the book. So I went and built one that is 3/4 of that, and it's only got 1 flap. It's on the right side, and then the front is just the cover. And I did that in part because that's what I had the material for. But I also I took an old Lutheran hymnal and I glued the 2 furthest out pieces, like the cover onto that on the inside to create some strength to it. And I've really been liking it. I mean, I wouldn't want to sell it to anybody. But the hard cover idea I found pretty useful, I think. And then I guess my question for you is, I'm not missing that other flap. I mean, that's where I would keep my blanks before, but they're fine where they are now in the 1 flap. So do you have an apologetic for the 2 flaps? I'm not looking to like convince you or anything. I'm just curious.
Yes. Well, this is my apologetic, is that I normally keep nothing in the middle, or I'll keep just what I'm working on in the middle. So everything else is tucked away. But other than that, no.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing too. And so what do you use to divide between the 2 sides, right? So when you say I'm going to put this under the right flap or under the left flap, what is the category you're using to decide which goes to which spot?
I've got on my left side, I've got blanks and templates, and then sort of a little file in the back. I've got some pictures of a cross that I bring with me. I put my Southwest sent me some drink coupons. I put it back there.
Yeah, you're kind of catch-all spot.
Yeah, and then on the right is stuff that's working. So on the right, I've got my logbook, I've got my quarterly file projects, and I've got my work week stuff. And then I got a loose page, which is my weekly planner, and then I got a project that I got cooking pretty hot right now. That's loose there. So.
Yeah. Okay, and that's all in the flap. You don't keep anything in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm kind of with you, although I just have the templates and blanks on the right flap in the back, and I have less of them because I got tired of carrying too much blank around with me. I got so big, dude. This all happened because it was just out of control, overloaded. It was so wide, and so I started using 2, and one's for one thing, one's for another. And then I ended up. Oh, this was part of one of the unexpected things I had to problem solve. I went back and I rethought how I was even laying out my projects, and I was wasting a lot of space, extra paper basically, for that. So I won't get into how I had to fix that, but I went through a major overhaul as a result. And part of that was that I decided I don't need as much blank and template with me at all times. There are certain ones I need. And then I've shifted, and this is maybe one of the bigger shifts, because you never really adopted this as a way at all, but I've always kept this Docket Gold half size. It's not legal pad. It looks like one, but they're the small ones. I've always kind of kept that there as just a quick catch for anything I got to write down. And I finally I then just abandoned a template for a blank day or a project. And I don't have half-page blanks anymore either. I'm just using these. And they're a little smaller, but they function fine. And gradually they're replacing all my other blanks. So I don't use them for, the bundle, for the fold over. I have those to create bundles, but for anything that's a half page or just starting something, I just start with these. And by doing that, it not only removed a lot of excess baggage space from the book, Um, but it lets me I keep that in the middle. So as soon as I open it, there's a blank piece of paper.
I went the other way just recently. I just put a lot more blanks in the page because I went to write something down. Just to make some notes. I wanted to just kind of brain dump yesterday morning, and I didn't have that many. I had like 3 or 4 pages, and I'm like, I don't know if I should use one of these pages. I thought, so I went and put like 20 more pages, 50, maybe 25 blank pages in there, so I wouldn't have any resilience to using
them. Right. Well, that's just it. And to get away from your fear of wasting the paper is kind of the part of the whole theory behind this thing, right?
Yep.
Is you got to not be afraid to mess up and start over. You mentioned you have a weekly sheet now. You already did, right? Are you still folding that thing up?
Yeah. My little weekly quarterly sheet. I don't use it as much, but it's been one of the problems with the summer is that I haven't been able to plot out my weeks like I would normally, and so I've needed to go back to that in the last couple of weeks, getting back into something like a normal rhythm. It's involved getting back to that and being able to sketch out. And how about this? Here's an interesting thing. I normally had stuff that I wouldn't have to put on my schedule or my calendar. It would just kind of happen because of my weekly pattern. But I've had to go back and add that to the schedule and add it to my list of things to do. So like Wednesday, I've been sending out Wednesday whatnot for 2 years. I wouldn't even have to think about it, but I missed so many this summer. I was late this summer. It just didn't fit into my pattern. So I had to go back and add it to my weekly sheets. Hey, that's going to happen on Wednesday. So I've had to go and rethink a bunch of things, and I'm sorry. There's a bunch of things even very fundamental things that I'm kind of rethinking. I mean, so you'll like this. I'm rethinking preaching, but I'm rethinking, I don't know, on a real, I don't even know the words to, I'm rethinking about what it means to be a pastor and because I'm trying to figure out what these congregations that I have are, St. Paul and Jesus Staff, and to have a church that's a bigger church, it's connected to the university, it's downtown, it's mother church of the whole area. What does this look like? What ought it look like? What does it mean to be? What does it look like to be St. Paul Lutheran Church right now in 2019? It's kind of I don't even know the words to. It seems like I'm going to have to think differently about a handful of things. I mean, not theologically, and not practically either. More like apologetically, almost like this. This is a weird thing. I feel myself drawn to preach to the people who aren't here yet.
Yep.
And
although the people there need it too, but they need what the people who aren't here yet need too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good Lutherans in the pew who are used to one thing and just don't know what they need. And we can go different directions on that. But I think that my complaint with homiletics in general is we've trained our listeners to accept a certain habit of sermon entertainment as just sort of the thing that we should do, and the good ones know enough to listen for certain things. They need to hear those certain things every week, and then we know we got a good sermon, and that's all fine. But there's something very meat grinder-ish about the whole thing.
I didn't mean to bring up sermons. That sends you off on that.
It does. It does. But your idea of those who aren't yet there, because it's not as though you want to. This is a big church growth error, right? It's like this church isn't for you; it's for those who aren't here yet, and that's wrong. That's just dead wrong. But if those who aren't here yet need to hear something that those who are there don't want to hear, then those who are there maybe aren't there. Or you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean that they're not Christians. I mean, there's some growth and maturing that needs to take place there too. Does it make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm wrestling with that too, especially because when we think about, for example, outreach or evangelism or whatever that's called, people who aren't in the church then being in the church, that there's a set of questions that people are wrestling with, I think. And why does life have meaning or whatever? Who knows what people are wrestling with. But if the preaching is not going to it's so hard to talk about without sounding like a church growth fool.
Yeah, or like you're condemning everybody who's trying really hard, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know, but there's a way that I want to that if people listening to the sermon say, yeah, that actually is answering questions that I'm asking, or that I ought to be asking, and there's a consistency there to where people can say, I can bring my neighbor to hear that because they're asking questions like that too.
Yeah.
My shortest sermon, by the way, so far all summer, shortest sermon, 27 minutes 43 seconds.
Oh, that's great.
I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. That's part of what makes we got away from that conversation before we finished it. But part of what makes the 8, 9:30, 10:30 tough is when you preach 25 minutes. That pushes those services a little longer. Yeah, that's pretty good. And they're accepting that from you as a new guy. They're like, okay, fine, do it.
Well, I can't preach a shorter one because then they'll say, look, he knows how to do it. But now, as far as they know, I don't know how to preach shorter than 27 minutes. So that's good for me.
Yeah.
Here's another thing, and this is something we can get our heads around. We might have talked about this. You mentioned it at the very beginning that that when new people come into the church, they bring a certain energy and delight in the doctrine that the old folks that have been hanging around don't have. And there's an energy to the convert. There's a joy to the convert, which is really good. And this is something I've been thinking about all summer. But you got to tell me if we talked about it. Just because I can't remember. But I do think one of our Lutheran problems, is that we do not expect conversion. And there's no reason when we read the Bible to not expect conversion, because it is what the Lord does, and it's what he's done for each one of us. But for whatever reason, we're like, I don't know, maybe we just don't want to set ourselves up for disappointment. Yep. Or I'm not sure.
We're afraid of it, but it's like we're afraid of being disappointed.
Yeah.
And this gets back to like, what if the things that are embarrassing are actually the most awesome? We go at conversion or at evangelism somewhat from the perspective of the Arminian, the Baptist, where we got to kind of make a pitch and convince and hope they'll come along, but then we have to reject their decision theology. And so we don't add that part to the end, and we end up stuck with this weird, like, non-pitch, non-sale thing. And I think the issue is that we're starting from the wrong foundation of what evangelism or what conversion is and where it takes place. So we get rid of the decision theology, but we're still, when we use the word evangelism or think about what it means, we're still building on the foundational assumption of Arminianism. And I think we have to scrap the building, basically, that it's entirely gone. And I don't say that I'm a magical answer to all this, but I think it has something to do with what I'm going to say next, which is not caring about conversion. Like literally not caring about conversion. I don't care if you convert to this. I'm going to tell you this. Whatever. Do what you want with it, man. Whatever. And I'm not saying be that rude, right? But like to have that compunction and conviction about it, that you might have a conversation with someone and within a few moments be talking about the fact that Jesus Christ is raised from the dead, has ascended to the highest heavens, is king of the universe, is ruling all things, and brings an impending judgment very soon, to which you will be accountable for every thought, word, and deed you have ever done. And if you are, and even a smidgenist, self-centered and not aware of it, it doesn't matter. You're going to burn. But here's the thing. He's king and wants to forgive you for that. So, hey, we can talk more. See you later. And just leave them. Like, just forget the sales pitch. Forget the conversion moment. Just put that out there. And yeah, somebody's going to be like, that's mean. And somebody's going to be like, I don't know. I don't care. And then somebody's going to go, whoa. Mm-hmm. And because we're so wanting the conversion and the moment of capture, we're always caught up in, well, what about the guy that didn't listen? How do we get him? So we're put it in a kind of biblical imagery a little bit. We're trying to fish for men with fishing poles, and I think we should use a net. And the net is the word, and the answer is to get that word as loud and as public as you can, and stop worrying about the results. Don't give a hoot about the results, because the Lord's going to build His church, and that's my conviction at this point, Brian. To your statement, doesn't mean I'm good at it yet, but it's reoriented to the way that I'm looking at our opportunities here. It's leaven too, right? So you got the net and you got the leaven.
Mm-hmm.
So put the leaven into the people in the pew and then send them out. But then if they're going out and they're not leavening the world, we only have one thing to blame: the preachers.
Yeah, well,
and it's not because they're not saying go do more mission, right? Oh, for Pete's sake. This place was nearly killed. St. Paul Rockford was nearly killed by a regular drama of you people need to do more preaching. Like that was the theme. Yeah. They're not going to do it. They're never going to do it. You're not leavening them, so they're not going to leaven the world. You're not salting them. They're not going to salt the world. You got to salt the people.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, yeah. No, that's right. So I think what I'm. No. I think we're on the same page. I think we're actually seeing it from very different angles, but I think we're talking about the same thing because there's this. It's not even like. It's not that the conviction that we have, our conviction of the ascension and the resurrection of Jesus is so solid that it needs no hype. It just is. Jesus is Lord. It's not a big deal, actually. I mean, it is the biggest of deals, but it simply is what is, and that's what we say. Jesus is Lord. And we don't have to drum up all this drama about it. Jesus is Lord. But there's a way I've been noticing that people will say, well, for example, with Islam, there's a way that Christians are afraid of Islam, as if Islam has any sort of strength, or they're afraid of secularism, as if secularism has any strength in and of itself. I mean, these are all. I mean, if Islam and secularism has any strength, it's the strength of rust. It's the strength of mold. It's a destroying thing. It's nothing in itself, and it simply doesn't stand up. And that the Lord Jesus, he calls people to be His own from every corner of the world. It's not like I look at a guy and say like, oh, he's Muslim, so I'm not gonna talk to him about church, or I'm not gonna tell him about Jesus or whatever, as if that matters what he is, because the Lord will do the work, like you said, of catching the people that He wants to catch, and He catches the wildest of people.
Yeah, crazy mad ones. The weakest. We don't think about telling anybody about Jesus, generally speaking. I just don't think it's kind of a common thought. And again, so you have like the evangelical / wish we were evangelical Lutheran answer, which is we'll tell people to tell people. And I don't think that works. I mean, you can first use of the law people into some sort of visible assembly. That it can be done, but there'll be no strength in that either. It'll be a house of cards. Mm-hmm. And so the wrestle is to try to figure out what is it that is this sickness we share as early 21st century American conservative, committed, wanting to be liturgical, confessing Lutherans. I'm not talking about anybody we are in disagreement with. I'm talking about our friends. What is the sickness we have as a culture in our pews? And I mean, we're part of it too. Every pastor's part of it too. That has led us to not assume I'm going to talk about Jesus to someone I don't know this week. Why is that not my assumption that I'm going to do that? Or put it another way, another category. Why do I not think I'm at war? why have I made peace with the world? And that's like a crazy question, right? Like what? Why would you say that? Well, I'm like, wait, why are we not saying that? And I'm accusing myself before anybody else here, by the way. And if there's something that would summarize my shift this summer, meet or no, it's that question being the one I'm not going to let myself forget.
You know, I had this theory which I told you about, and that is that there's more Christians out there than we think, but we're just kind of shamed into silence.
Yeah.
So to experiment with that, to prove it,
I think you're right.
I made a bumper sticker on one of those bumper sticker websites, you know, that says "I am a Christian," and I put it on my laptop, so that when I go to sit at the Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, and I'm working away, it'll just say "I am a Christian," and I figured, well, that would mean that people would walk by and say, "Hey, I'm a Christian too."
Did it happen?
It hasn't happened once.
Well, you're in Austin.
I know. I haven't been, apparently I have not been out into the right spots, but or maybe my bumper sticker is not obvious enough. I want to get a bright green one or something like that.
What I'm finding, I think you're right. I think there are Christians, but they're atrophied and starving. Mm-hmm. So I regularly at a coffee shop will overhear a group talking about their church or their faith. And it's like Beth Moore, though, right? And they don't say Beth Moore, but like that's the level. And so, yeah, they're out there, but it's not like they're chasing real Christianity. They've got Jesus is Lord as a veneer, and by God's grace, some of them certainly do trust in his birth and his death, his resurrection. But that's not what we're allowed to see. We can't see that. We can't see who is really felicitously inconsistent enough to still have faith and who's not. But what we can see is that the vast majority of them are being slowly starved to death, and they don't know it. And as they're being starved in their churches, a new poison or a strong poison from the culture itself is shifting them into paganism, a mystical paganism. And so I don't disagree, and yet I think we're at a precipice, and we're in a point of jeopardy. We're at a place where the church, I'm going military again, it's like it's time to rally, and I love that word now. The rally is the intentional small retreat in order to attack, right? And so you get the flag up, and everyone get to the flag, form a unit, and go, right? And that's the point of history I think we find ourselves in this country for Christianity. I'm not talking go buy guns and go up to the hills. I'm talking about figuring out how to be a people of the word that know the word so much that we can't imagine not talking about it. Yeah.
Yep.
Which, yeah, so a shift. Hey, Bryan, this has been great. We got more can we do on. There was one more topic we didn't get on though. You had something on your list. It was like joy something.
The theology of delight. Oh, that's simply this point. We'll talk about it more sometime. But how what we delight in matters, and I don't think we think about that enough. But I think once we start thinking in those terms, then vistas begin to open up that we can't even imagine. So that the scriptures are very concerned about the things that give us pleasure, and the things that should and shouldn't give us pleasure, and that our own pleasure is found in authorized things and not forbidden things, and so forth. But there's something there. We'll have to talk about. But and then something on I wrote this warning in empathy. I don't know what that was talking about. And you mentioned holiness versus righteousness. We hardly talked about that too. There's a lot more. Oh man,
there's a lot, and we haven't really even gotten into like real life at all either.
I know. I sent Hannah to college.
Yeah, right. Like that. No, I can't, because I think going to college is a mistake. But that's got to be hard on you as a family to move and have her be gone at the same time. I would imagine that's just kind of a weird. It's like you got on a spaceship and then like someone got blown out of an airlock and now you landed on a planet and there's kind of didn't make the trip, right? That's the only way I can imagine. Not the spaceship part, but like, is it weird? I mean, it's like the house is not empty, but
it is. I went to wake up Daniel this morning. So Daniel says, "Dad, I want you to wake me up so we can stretch in the morning." So I got him up yesterday because he started PE and he's all sore. It's great. So I'm like, so I normally stretch in the morning, wake up to stretch. So we're stretching, and so we're laying down next to each other, stretching. And I said, do you miss Hannah? And he says, yeah. I said, I miss Hannah too. She makes everything better. And that's
Aw.
right.
Oh.
I mean, it's just,
How far away is she now?
She's in Albuquerque, so it's a 11-hour drive.
Yeah, it's quite a ways. Is it a flight too? Is it easy flight?
Yeah, there's a flight. There's a flight. So we're going to try to go to Albuquerque for the Balloon Fiesta in October, but just logistically can't make it work. So I think Carrie is going to go. I think that's our plan now. Carrie came up with a plot last night. She says, "So you guys can't come, but I'm going."
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
What school is that? University of
University of New Mexico, which is where Carrie and I met, actually, and also Carrie's parents went there, and both Carrie's grandmas graduated from there.
Oh, wow.
So Hannah's 4th generation, which is kind of weird. It's not like we were really proud of it. Like you go to University of New Mexico just because it's cheap and close. That's why people go there, I think. But Hannah really loved it. We went, like, we visited all these nice schools, but look at how, just God be praised how things work out. But I was trying to talk her into staying in Colorado, where we thought we would be, but instead she moves halfway between Denver and
that's nice.
Austin.
Yeah.
So God be praised. But we went and visited all these nice schools, and we went to visit New Mexico, which is where I went. And I said, man, this place is kind of dumpy, but she really loves it. And so far so good. She's having a great time. So like she's got her honors class. So this is how she's reading Aristotle. So I'm reading Aristotle along with her. So I can talk to her about her.
Is there a good LCMSU charter there or not?
Yep.
Oh,
Grace Lutheran Church is our home congregation, and Marsh Schamberger. How about this? This is pretty cool. Marsh Schamberger was the praise and worship leader at Calvary Chapel when Carrie and I used to go there in college.
Oh, wow.
And he's since become a Lutheran through Pirate Christian and a handful of, in fact, through Gene Edward Veith, who came to town to do a thing. And so Marsh and his wife Rachel are there, and he did SMP, and he's doing the Lutheran Lobos in Albuquerque. So
that's cool. That's cool. That's good. That's the most important thing if you are going to go to college is make sure you got a good church close and easy.
That was our we told Hannah, said we can do anywhere where you can afford, as long as there's a 20-minute drive to a decent church. That was
for your kids. Maybe for the listeners out there, Brian's kids are like Brian, so just know your kid driving 20 minutes is maybe a high order, and ideally you want it on campus if you can. We got a few of those. Not enough
is right.
All right. Well, let's call it for now, and we can do this again at some point. We're going to talk about the end of the world again too, but it'll have to be when I can prepare enough to at least have an outline for the thing. So I appreciate your time, Brian, and
good to catch up.
Yeah, welcome to Texas.
Was that worth $1? What about $5? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?